The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook, download their top-rated app in the App Store, and use promo code RTRS for whatever special is going on. We'll tell you about it later. And brought to you by Nature Pet Food, the official pet food of the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. Slow cooked with Superfusion. It's good for your dog or cat. Get 20% off your first order with By Nature at chewy.com by using promo code RTRS20. And Stateside Urban Craft Vodka, the official vodka of the Ricky and the sponsor of the Corner 3 newsletter, available at statesidevodka.com. On the show today, the Sixers finally get rid of the just most dangerous person in the front office. The upheaval that we've been talking about finally happens. And then former Suns GM and Mikal Bridges trader for Ryan McDonough of the now of the Scallon Palace podcast and radio.com will join us. We'll talk to him about Doc Rivers, who he worked with in Boston, and the inner workings of being a GM, and of course the Bridges Zhaire Smith trade. Without any further ado, Amos and the chef.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
Welcome to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, along with a guy who is still celebrating the Lakers' 17th NBA championship, Mike Levin. How is he? Is the guy still raging over there?
Oh, it was big rage. We drove around, honked the horn a little bit, picked up dinner. Alyssa yelled "Go Lakers" out of the car a couple times. Really thrilling stuff. Thrilling celebrations.
There you go.
No, she feels good. She's happy, and I am happy for her, and I'm happy for myself to be right calling Lakers in 6.
Congratulations.
So, and that's very big for me. A huge win on my part.
Yep. Well, I've seen it all over the internet.
Everyone giving me credit for a pretty easy pick. Yeah. Maybe the easiest call there was.
Yeah, that's what people do when you're right on the internet, is they just celebrate it. So before we get to Ryan, so it's hilarious. The Sixers, we have been.
It's all fixed.
It's all fixed.
It's all fixed. We got it taken care of. You were worried, and you were worried that they wouldn't. You were.
I was.
They wouldn't fix it.
I was wrong.
They came out and they said, guys, all that mumbo jumbo, all that crap before, that's gone.
Over.
And that man's name is Phil Jabour, someone that we all know and we've blamed for everything this whole time. And he's out of here. We kicked his ass out. And so I feel great.
So expectedly, and boy, it is really just amazing. All of Brian Colangelo's cronies remain, but the last person that was hired by Sam Hinkie in the Sixers organization was lured away by new Kings GM Monty McNair. Hinkie hired Phil Jabour in 20.
I'm imagining him like arranging it so that a helicopter can come by his window at work, and he just jumps out the window and just catches the first helicopter
that comes by.
Anything possible, please get me out of here. They're not letting me leave.
Yeah, I congratulations to Phil Jabour
God bless
for
him,
getting
Phil.
out of here. Yeah,
man, to bigger and better things.
Yeah,
and finally, Brian Colangelo does have the staff that he needs to succeed here. No more of that Hinkie crap. What a delight. What a special thing that we have going on.
So he is really good at his job, which is why Monty McNair hired him away. He is a really, really good personnel guy. So when you talk about scouting, he was the director of scouting. For him, it was not just about like looking at college tape and stuff. It was more than that. Had great relationships with college coaches, and really good at like the stuff that you don't really think about. Like we talked with Ryan about looking at video of players. You need systems for that, right? Because otherwise you're just watching tons and tons of game tape, and it's sort of like studying. You can study poorly for 4 hours or great for 1 hour. And he was pretty well known for doing that the right way. So it does.
Did you know his name before he left?
Yes.
Okay.
But
I've never heard of this person.
yeah, so, and it's weird. I don't remember him getting promoted, but it did seem like, even though his promotion, the title didn't seem like it changed at all. It did seem like it changed in 2019, 2020, but it is a loss, just so anyone knows. He is the literally the last guy. It was Brett and Jabour.
There's no one else?
I don't think so, unless there's a lower level scout or an analytics person,
Elton
obviously,
as a
which
player?
they relied too much on. Yes, Elton as a player.
Sure, that's good. Scott O'Neill, I guess, was just sort of carrying the hinky torch. I'm sure his really beacon for his philosophy for everything.
I can tell you Jabour is very well thought of. So
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that's it. Speaking of front office, I don't know if we want to talk about it, but I did order that thing that I sent you the other day. And
You didn't order it from me, did you?
No. It's going to come to me.
As I can. It's a waste of paper.
No. I'm going to read it.
Good.
Should we say what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. So someone sent me, and I want to get the title of it. We know that Scott O'Neill's next book, Be Where Your Feet Are, comes out in June of 2021.
We're all very excited.
What we didn't know was there is another book that came out. Let me see. I'm trying to figure out when it came out. Came out in 2005, January 31st. From Fantasyland to the Rat Race, a practical guide to thriving in the real world.
I love learning how to thrive. Every step of the way.
Oh, God, it's so good.
And this came from the Spike Lee of the Rights for Sanchez podcast, Michael Weber, who sent me his LinkedIn blogs that started all this.
Wait, no. Weber did not send me from Fantasyland to the Rat Race.
No, but he sent me that. Now we know he uncovered him as a burgeoning writer.
Yeah.
And now you're going back into his deep cuts, into his his studio albums that he's really releasing under an independent label.
Really, just the next Tony Robbins. Just gonna have people walking on hot coals. From Fantasyland to the Rat. You got to understand, it's a rat race. So here is the description of it.
Just the lamest person of all time. I just fucking can't deal with it. We spend so much time on this goddamn team, and this fucking guy makes so much money being the lamest person on the planet.
Life is not easy when you're new to the, quote, rat race. You will not know what to expect or what to do when you're playing a game without knowing the rules. Unfortunately, there are no cliff notes or tutors to help guide you through the confusing parts. To make matters worse, the stakes are higher and the pressure is on you. That's why we wrote this book. We both, Scott O'Neill and Eric Hines, we both have had some terrific and gratifying experiences in the work world. Many...
I love the work world. I think there's a lot. The work world has a lot to offer.
Many errors are commonly committed by young professionals earlier in their careers, but we believe they can be avoided with some down-to-earth practical guidance and a little effort. This real-life how-to book will help you through many of the difficult challenges you will encounter as you begin your professional life. The stories and experiences contained in this book are real. Finally, we combine our own experiences with those of other successful young business people to provide a best practices how-to guide of how to help you navigate through the rough waters of your early career.
I love best practices.
Oh, yeah. The work world. Tell me more. Tell me more about the work world.
I do hope Scott and this other guy had a falling out. And so if we can get the other guy on the podcast, Eric Heim, whatever his name is.
Eric Hines. Eric, which one of you guys was Fantasyland and which one of you guys was the real world?
I would love to hear about this.
Yeah, you and me both. The other. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the Dave Joerger rumor.
Yeah.
Joerger rumor.
Yes.
He, according to Frank Isola, kicking the tires on becoming Doc's first assistant in Philly. As you said prior to the podcast, Doc has a reputation for really liking to hire like former head coaches as his number two. Ty Lue, currently, or at least most recently. And Brett did that with Mike D'Antoni and stuff. So Dave Joerger, he's an interesting guy. He's seen as like a kind of brilliant tactician in Sacramento, and where was he before that? Memphis. But he's also seen as an asshole, like kind of universally. Yeah. And so I wonder how that would work as a number two. I don't know. But it feels kind of funny to just like load up your staff with massive assholes. Total idiot. Very talented, mean pieces of shit. But I don't know. I mean, if he seems like he's, I don't mind more of a tactician there. I mean, do we assume that this means that like everyone on the Sixers, right? Ime Udoka and the rest of the Sixers coaching staff is like fully out the door?
It does make sense now that the Udoka rumors were starting early, because now that I think about it, Udoka, probably had a pretty good feel that Brett was going to be gone, and that meant that he wasn't going to have a job.
It's very intuitive.
Yeah.
I think that the guy that they really wanted to fire last year, that did worse this year, I think he's going to be gone.
Those rumors came out before the bubble restarted, so I guess he wasn't as sold as we all were. I don't care who the assistant coaches are. Great. I mean, it does seem sort of dream teamy to put former head coaches there, but if he's picking them, it's funny.
And he's got enough of a like credibility to where you're not worried about like, is not like every time I think of someone replacing someone, my mind immediately goes to AJ Feely. I don't know why. That was just embedded in me at a young age, that anytime someone is going to be replacing someone that they're behind, it's a classic AJ Feely situation. But nobody's going to be clamoring for Joerger Feely.
And Doc Rivers not intimidated by him. It's not sort of like the situation that was in LA where everyone kind of assumed that
the Lakers.
Frank. Oh yeah. Not Clippers. With when Jason Kidd got hired, everyone assumed that Frank Vogel was just going to get fired. It was just there to get fired at some point for Jason Kidd to get the job. Go ahead, hire as many former head coaches as you want.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah, I don't. I think that's everything. We have plenty of mailbag questions. We can do them next time. Do you want to get to Ryan? Did you have anything else?
No. I can't believe we're still here.
Yeah, nothing. It doesn't seem like anything's changing.
No. I might be changing. I might be getting worse. I might be losing whatever, small tether to reality I had on my brain. I think the Sixers are just have totally poisoned me forever. As you will hear in this interview with Ryan. I think I made him uncomfortable.
Ryan.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just so mad at this team all the time. And doing this podcast makes me realize how mad I am at everything, at them, for all of it.
Tune into the part of the interview where Mike demands that Ryan admit that everyone's laughing at the Sixers.
Yeah.
Before we get to Ryan, Mike, I know you don't normally look at your screen during the pod. I want you to look at this. You see this right here?
You're not holding it up well.
There you go. There you go. Sorry.
The tweet.
Finally, the T-shirts. So we gave out T-shirts to the first 5 winners. So if you're signed up for the Corner 3 newsletter with Zoe, you are registered. You have to open the newsletter every week. We'll give away 5 of these every week. 5 stateside shirts. Has Zoe's famous tweet that says, your biggest fear as a man should be getting roasted in a public setting by a group of Philadelphia school children. Where are you going in that nut-ass tie, old head? Will have you doing deep self-reflection. And the one thing I want you to look at on the shirt, at home is the number of replies, retweets, and likes is not correct. They're all significant numbers to the Ricky. So congratulations to Tyler, JP, Kelly, Andrew, and Lexi, who won this week. If you go to RightsRickySanchez.com/newsletter, there will be a new one that comes out on Thursday, and we'll give out the shirts every week. If you pick up the shirt at Stateside, they'll give you one of their cool Stateside glasses as well that is made from the bottom of the Stateside bottle, which is cool.
And it's a great newsletter, and it's not too long.
Yes.
It is the perfect amount. It is the perfect length for a newsletter. It's delightful. Zoe's the man.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So thank you to Stateside Vodka, who paid for the shirts and also sponsors the newsletter, the #1 craft spirit here in Philly. Distilled 7 times, no gluten whatsoever, gluten-free. We only take gluten-free alcohol advertising. And they have that 1.75-liter bottle in stock at wine and spirit stores in PA and then in liquor stores in Delaware and Jersey. And if you're in the Philly area, you can do delivery. They'll deliver it to you at statesidevodka.com, or you can do curbside pickup. So thanks to Stateside. Ryan McDonough time. So Ryan McDonough, Radio.com sports insider, also co-host of Scal and Pals, also former GM of the Suns. I have to ask, how does it feel to just be a pal? I mean, you have a pretty good resume to just be a pal.
Well, that was one of my potential Twitter handles. I joined Twitter in late July. I think it was right before the NBA's restart. I'd resisted for years, 15 plus years in NBA front offices. And then, when I got into the media space a couple years ago, people suggested I do it. And for a number of reasons, I said, well, I'm probably going to stay off Twitter for at least for the short term. But then, when I slid into the co-host chair with Scal, one of the potential Twitter handles was Scal's Pal. And one person only voted for that. That was Brian Scalabrine. Everybody else, what are you doing? You've accomplished a lot more than to be Scal's Pal. So instead, I decided to go with at McDNBA as my now official Twitter handle.
Well, just as a quick follow-up to that, how has it been to go from somebody who gets criticized by the media, right? Not in terms of you specifically, but you're a GM of a basketball team, to somebody who has to be critical of somebody in the field that you were in? Has that been a tough transition? And do things go through your head every time? It's well, I'm going to if I want to work again, yada, yada, yada. How hard is that?
I don't think it's very hard, Spike. I think it's actually helpful to do different jobs and see different perspectives. I think that's helpful regardless of what you do. And what I mean by that is I think it would be helpful for a front office guy to try to coach a team, for example, or for a coach to try to run a draft or free agency or a trade deadline, or for an owner really to do any of those things. Or to put it a different way, for any of those groups to officiate a game. Try doing something different, and then when you're sitting on your couch, screaming at the head coach, a player, the GM, the official. It's funny. I remember a preseason game when I was in the Celtics front office. We were playing down in Hartford, Connecticut, where UConn plays, and there was a tough call on the baseline. It was a veteran official. I think it was Tony Brothers, and somebody in our group, Danny Ainge, I think it was, said something to him, and it was funny. It was preseason. It was a little bit looser, so he basically took the whistle off his neck, put it in his hand, handed it to Danny, and he goes, "Danny, do you want to do this?" And Danny's like, "No, I'm good. I'm good." So I think it was just a great lesson in humility. And what I do, Spike, and the way I try to do it is say, look, whether I agree with the decision or not, I obviously have my own opinions, but here it was what the team is thinking, and here is why they did it. I think I'm good at explaining why they did it. For example, why did the Knicks trade Kristaps Porzingis? Well, they wanted double max cap space. At the time, I pointed out that was extremely risky. It would have been a grand slam if they could get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. It would be a disaster if they didn't get one player as good as Kristaps Porzingis. And what happened? They did not get one player as good as Kristaps Porzingis, and it was a disaster. But I think that, but rather than personal attacks, which I think are generally useless, and nobody who's been in the business at a high level does or should do that. It's more like, okay, here's what the team is thinking. Here's the thought process that led to that decision. And then obviously you can analyze the results, but that's a lot easier to do in hindsight than it is to say it at the time. If you're on record saying something, I give you a lot more credit than looking back at it years later when you know how it worked out or how it didn't work out.
So let's get into it a little bit, because you're wearing a Celtics-looking hat, although it is a Brian Scalabrine hat, as you said. We are a Sixers podcast that generally, I would say, roots for the Sixers, sometimes against our best interest.
Yeah.
What is it? There's a lot of former Celtics guys out there. Mm-hmm. Frank Vogel is one. Just won a championship. There's a bunch of guys that seem to Daryl Morey former Celtics
Right.
guy.
Yeah.
It is a growing, tree of that stuff. So what is it about those assholes up there that sort of breeds seemingly good NBA personnel?
Well, I think it's like any organization that has a lot of success. I mean, San Antonio is obviously well known for their tree, the front office tree and the coaching tree, and all the people who have worked for R.C. Buford and Greg Popovich, who have gone on to do great things. And then I think if you look at the Celtics, since Danny Ainge arrived 17 years ago in 2003, led by Doc Rivers on the coaching side, obviously he was a coach for 9 years and had a lot of success with 3 conference finals, 2 NBA finals, and a championship in 2008. And obviously now he's your head coach with the 76ers. And then his assistants, Tom Thibodeau, was our defensive architect when we went to the finals twice in 3 years, in 2008 and 2010. Beat the Lakers the first time, lost the second time, and then after the loss in 7 games in 2010, Tom got the Chicago Bulls job, and he obviously did very well there. So, and then Lawrence Frank comes in, and Lawrence Frank is, kind of Tom's replacement, the defensive coordinator. I think Lawrence was only with us 1 year, and then he gets the head coaching job in Detroit. And then on the front office side, you mentioned Daryl Morey, who's done very well in Houston. Chris Wallace had a long, relatively successful run in Memphis. I was in Phoenix for 5 years. So I think it's, it starts at the top with ownership and Danny Ainge, who are, the constants there since 2003. They've done a really good job, obviously winning a lot of games. That's where it starts, but developing personnel on the coaching and front office side. And then from there, if you have success in any organization or any business, people say, all right, we can't get Danny Ainge or Doc Rivers, but who are the next guys we can get? And that has helped me and a bunch of other guys, get head coach and GM jobs along the way.
Well, talking about Ainge, there was a really interesting article, I thought, from Brian Windhorst the other day on the Executive of the Year award and sort of like the politics involved in that award, because it's not really, people don't debate it that much, the way they debate MVP and so on and so forth. But he mentioned in there the lack of support that Ainge has gotten for that award over the last, decade and a half, which seems pretty incongruent with the success that he's had. Why do you, and it is an award that is voted on by your contemporaries. So I guess why, do you think there's anything there? And like, why does it seem like Ainge doesn't get the respect that you would imagine he would?
Well, he has won it before. He did win in 2008 when we made the trades for Kevin Garnett from Minnesota and Ray Allen from Seattle at the time, and signed James Posey and Eddie House to go with the guys Paul Pierce and Rajon Rondo and Kendrick Perkins, the guys we already had, won the championship that year. So he has won it. I think he's been in the final 3 or 5 another time. Guys, I think that award, to be honest with you, I came in second my first year in Phoenix to R.C. Buford in 2014. I think so much of that award is the trend line. I think the reason I finished second that year is because we were with the Trust the Process Sixers in the preseason polls. It's like, how low can you go? There's actually a hilarious picture that Sam Hinkie's a friend of mine that I texted him when I saw it. Somebody sent me. It said it takes 2 to tango, and had me and Sam, like our faces superimposed on 2 tango dancers. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, Philadelphia won some teen, I don't know, 17 whatever games that year.
It was
and
19.
We won 48.
That's fine.
19. Okay, we won 48 out of nowhere, and so it was like, wow, the Suns almost doubled their win total, surprise team and all that. So I got a lot of momentum, but I think that's it. And I bring it up, Spike, because I think to some extent that penalizes the guys who are consistently good. Like, for example, Sam Presti in Oklahoma City, who is also a friend of mine. I think is one of the best executives in the league. I think it'd be hard to debate otherwise that he's not, in the top 5, top 3, whatever you think. He's never won the award, which is amazing, but they're good every year. There aren't really peaks and valleys. Even this year when people thought, they'd bottom out, and including me, thought they'd be a non-playoff team. They're 4th or 5th in the West, whatever they were, and, went to 7 games in the first round. So I think so much of the award is that, but it is shocking to me. I believe on the coaching side, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Eric Spoelstra has ever won Coach of the Year. So I think sometimes those awards, people get, when you're consistently excellent and you set that standard and expectation, it's easy to get overlooked on a yearly award because, maybe you didn't have the biggest upswing, from the previous year.
Is it also that Danny's a bit of an asshole? Like in that, he wants to win trades, which I think Hinkie got a little bit of flack for, which was like, hey, you're not playing the game enough. You're not easing up on deals. And Danny, I guess, has been doing it long enough and is a basketball guy, having played in the NBA. So maybe he gets off with it. But it seems like, anytime there's a a draft prospect that hits in the late teens, early 20s, there inevitably is an article that said Danny Ainge had them like he was just about to take them kind of thing. And it seems like Danny is a guy who intensely competitive dude and like doesn't care about maybe the politics as much as he wants to just like win at all cost, even if that comes with like burnishing his reputation of being like that kind of guy. Does that make any sense?
Well,
I don't know.
I worked for him for 10 years. He doesn't care about his not about his reputation. That's different. But like with the fans, the media, think he really doesn't care. A lot of guys say they don't, but you know they're on Twitter. They're you know kind of crowdsourcing to see how's this going to react. Is it going to positively,
with the crowdsourcing on Twitter.
You know, or negatively
we
impact you know my job? Danny really doesn't care. And the best example I can give you guys of that, this was after I was gone, but you know I was GM of the Phoenix Suns in 2016. Not many people had Jaylen Brown in their top three. It was a consensus. You know, 1 and 2 where, you know, Philly got Simmons. Brandon Ingram went 2 to the Lakers. And then, like, it was somewhat of a shock to a lot of people. I mean, everybody had Brown in the lottery somewhere, but most had him closer to the teens than to 3, you know. And Danny Ainge, like, you know, I talked to him after about it. I was like, Danny, you know, kudos to you for pulling the trigger. And obviously it's worked out great. I mean, the guy looks like he's going to be an all-star. But Danny said, I thought he was the best player. Like no other thought, concern, you know, how's this going to be received? And that confidence, I think, made him really good as a player. Maybe it does rub some people the wrong way. But look, as you guys know, his job is not to make other people feel good. It's a win-at-all-costs league. It's a zero-sum game. So he's not holding a gun to anybody's head on the other side, making them do a deal. If they choose to do a deal, I did some with him. Some worked out great. One with Isaiah Thomas worked out horribly. Like that was the choice, the franchise's choice. They made that choice. And if he, you know, doesn't play the game, then I personally have no problem with that. But keep in mind, I'm biased since I worked for him for 10 years, and he and I are, you know, pretty good friends.
We take a break from our chat with Mr. Ryan McDonough to tell you about our sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. Presenting sponsor of the Ricky, DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm going to get to the football betting special in a second, but I'm going to bring up the NBA futures for next year.
Oh,
I want you to guess some title odds. Hold on. Let me bring it up. It's not on the front anymore. I didn't think of this before I started. So hold on. I'll just do search. I love the app, by the way. I'm a big fan of the DraftKings app, even though I can't find. There we go. Tell me something nice about DraftKings basketball.
Oh, man.
There we go.
Been losing a lot.
So the 2020-21 season, who do you think is the favorite to win the championship?
I would say the Lakers.
They are at plus 350, so it's not a super heavy favorite. Clippers at plus 400, Bucks at plus 500, Warriors at plus 600, which I kind of like if the odds were a little bit longer. Heat at plus 900. I want you to guess what the Sixers are.
16.
They are plus 3,000. So they're 30 to 1, right ahead of the Jazz at 40 to 1, and behind the Rockets at 22 to 1.
That's tough.
Yeah. And then they are, to win the conference, they are plus 1,000. So they have a 1 in 10 shot of getting to the finals.
That's tough. Let's see what happens when they trade for Marcin Gortat. See how the odds change that way. Starting point guard Marcin Gortat.
Yep. As far as football goes, week 6 coming up. No Thursday night game, so all this weekend. The place you want to bet week 6 and bet football is DraftKings Sportsbook. Can't miss offer, giving all new users the chance to receive a sign-up bonus up to $1,000 when you sign up and play in DraftKings. Remember, there's the casino as well. Bet on the baseball playoffs. Great odds boosts every Sunday to help you make it rain. And right now, by the way, if you want to bet that basketball future, all basketball fans get a 200% profit boost on any basketball market once you sign up. Safe, secure. You get your money right away when you withdraw it. When you deposit it, it goes in right away. It's just a great app. We're very happy to be partners with DraftKings. Very happy. Thank you, DraftKings. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code RTRS when you sign up. Get up to $1,000. That's code RTRS for a sign-up bonus of up to $1,000. Limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Pennsylvania only, in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. Bonus comprised of a first deposit bonus and a first bet match, each up to $500. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. back to the interview with Ryan. You mentioned that team that went from, 25 to 48 wins or 24. So I remember that being surprising. And I remember there was a certain trade with the Wizards that really made it indicate that it seemed like you guys were tanking. Did you trade Gortat maybe?
Yeah.
I forget what it was. And so you come and you win 48 games. And I'm like, let me go and look at that roster. And I look at the roster and I cannot, for the life of me, figure out how that team won 48 games. So two-parted question. How did it happen? Hornacek was the coach, I believe. How did it happen? And then did that ultimately derail what you were trying to build there, winning that many games that quickly?
That's a great question, Spike. And I think what it did for sure is set a super high ceiling and a level that I thought, right or wrong, was unsustainable going forward. And the reason, you mentioned the roster, we made a bunch of trades, the pretty consistent theme, trading veteran players for younger players and or draft picks or future cap flexibility, right? So we made 4 trades the first offseason. Real quick, there were Jared Dudley and a second-round pick going out. We got Eric Bledsoe and Caron Butler back. Then we did a deal with Indiana where Louis Scola went out. We got Gerald Green and Miles Plumlee and a first-round pick back. And then we did a deal to reroute Caron Butler to Milwaukee, got Ish Smith and Slava Krafstoff back. That created more cap space. And then the last one was a Gortat deal you mentioned with Washington where basically, Spike, we took a bunch of players that we didn't think were good fits and kind of jammed them in with Gortat, if that makes sense. The deal was for us to get a first-round pick in return, which we did. Emeka Okafor was injured. But I bring it up because it was kind of like, the way we sold it to the players, and Jeff Hornacek, our coach, finished second to the great Greg Popovich in Coach of the Year voting and was certainly deserving of the award, did a great job. We said, look, we're giving you guys all an opportunity. This is a golden opportunity, and every single one of them, for the most, Goran Dragic, Eric Bledsoe, Channing Frye, the Morris twins, Gerald Green, like Ish Smith, they all took advantage of it and played great. So the good news, Spike, is when you're going through it, it's, you're riding that roller coaster up to the top and you say, wow, this is great. But then when you take a step back and look at it objectively, you say, well, shoot, we won 48 games. We had like 6 guys have career years. They're almost certainly not going to do that next year. And in the Western Conference, we still didn't make the playoffs. I think you needed to win 49 or 50. So it's like, how do we, we kind of hit the ceiling and then the coaster starts to come down and you say, all right, can we run it back with this group or can we try to improve our team? And that's what we did, by bringing in Isaiah Thomas. And that team was like more talented. We had a lot of good play. We had Isaiah Thomas. We had Brandon Wright. We had like center depth, but it was almost like that was, like kind of the other end of the spectrum, Spike, where we tried to load the deck with talent, and we did have talent. The team the next year started off 28-20, but there was all kind of infighting, and nobody was happy with the 3-point guard thing. So to answer your question, yeah, I to some extent in hindsight, obviously not at the time, but I wish we had more of a gradual build because, as I mentioned, so much of it in the league, as you guys know, is about the trend line. Is it trending in the right direction? A couple of years ago, as you guys know, if I told you guys 3 or 4 years ago that Brett Brown would win 50 games a couple years later, every Sixers fan would be elated. But then when they win 50 games and then lose in Game 7 of the conference semifinals on a Kawhi Leonard shot, well, next year you better win a championship. So that's how much. And so much of it is how the trend line is going and the perception of that. And we set the bar so, I think, like unreasonably high that, right or wrong, we didn't think we could match it. And there was a lot of roster turnover, after that when we broke it down and started to rebuild the team.
I would like you to, if you don't mind, peel back the curtain on what a day for a GM is, either in the offseason or during the season, because how much of it is really just doing a fancy version of Trade Machine and being like, well, who the fuck can we get? Who the fuck can we get somebody?
Not as much as you'd like. Not as much as I'd like. That was a very small part of the job. So here's the challenge now, guys, as we sit here in October 2020 and record this show. The challenge is basically now, as a president of basketball operations and or GM, as you know, some teams have that dual structure now where it's 2 guys, but especially for the top guy, whoever the top guy is in the organization, you're basically the CEO of the basketball operation. And I bring that up because when I got fired by the Phoenix Suns, it was about 2 years ago now, I think I had over 50 people reporting to me in some form or fashion, not including the players. So that's, 15 to now 17 players with the 2-way contracts. That's their agents. You have the trainers, the family, all the people around them. That's a whole separate entity. But the staffs have grown so significantly from the coaching to player development to analytics to training to video to sports science to medical. You know what I mean? It's just, you really check every box. And that's not to mention whatever you have to do with ownership, with the fans, with the media, with the business side, PR, you know what I mean? So the job's a monster. I bring it up to say that. And the better organizations, the ones that are consistently good, like the Celtics who I work for, like Miami, I think with Pat Riley, certainly San Antonio's in that category. They streamline all that and make it very efficient. So their top evaluators can spend the most time on basketball. I know that sounds simple, but certain organizations try to reinvent the wheel, and you have, owners or guys from the business side or whoever asking even top executives to do all kinds of crazy stuff. And that's where I've talked to guys who, have got fired. It's obviously easier to look back at it in hindsight, like anything else, and figure out what you could have done better. But I've talked to guys who say, oh yeah, I'm doing, all this stuff with the arena renovation. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's easy to think now at the time, like in hindsight, but I'm thinking, well, if the team doesn't win, you're not going to be around to win that new arena. You're going to be gone, brother, or practice facility or whatever the case may be. So I think, if I were to do the job again at a relatively high level, whether it's a GM or not, whatever the role is, it's figure out how to streamline that, how to delegate all that, and how to get your top evaluators, the one guy in particular, to really focus on what you're talking about, with the trade machine, with draft evaluation, and as Eric Spoelstra says, block out the noise, because it's easy to get overwhelmed with a tidal wave of noise. And then, in that situation, it's easy to show up to the big events, the draft, free agency, the trade deadline, unprepared. You say, look, I haven't had enough time, and I got to rely on a bunch of people's opinions that I don't really know how confident I am as far as their evaluations, as far as the recommendations they are making.
I want to ask a sort of a follow-up to the inner workings of it and what you're doing, and go back to something that you said earlier about things starting at ownership in the beginning. People talk a lot about a person having, and especially in Philadelphia we have, who has final say on this deal, yada, yada, yada. It's always the owner who has final say. But how many, how often in the NBA is it that the owner is actually getting involved in that decision, or actually trust the person in charge of personnel to just do what's right? How much involvement is there in ownership, more than, well, tell me why, more than the normal question that an employer would ask an employee?
That's a great question, Spike. It really depends on the franchise. Keep in mind, I was in the league for 15 plus years, but I only worked for 2, which I think is a little bit unique that, you're in the league for a decade and a half. And as you know, coaches and executives tend to bounce around more than that. Without being specific, you guys can draw your own conclusions. One of the teams I work with, it was more, the owners asking, setting a budget and asking us to explain why, and then allowing us to, make decisions. The other, it was very involved in every single level of minutia and things that you guys wouldn't believe if I told you the level of involvement, where you're wondering, like, why is this person or this group of people so involved in that, and so I bring it up because that really varies. I feel like I've seen both ends of the spectrum, and of the 30 teams, they all do it differently. So here's the thing that's so frustrating, guys, and what I really don't understand, and what I would say to the Sixers owners, or if any of the owners of the 30 teams are listening to your great podcast, I'd say, look, if anybody is doing a job, they would like to be given certain parameters for the job. They'd like to be given, set expectations for the job, get a budget, give a time period, and then with minimal interference, be judged on the results over time. Why is that so hard? You know what I mean? Why is it because the opposite of that, if you guys had somebody running around on the back of your right now and banging cymbals and hitting you while you're doing the show, you probably wouldn't be as effective doing this podcast. Why would you distract and interfere and meddle, or whatever you want to call it, in the process, make certain decisions yourself or heavily influence them, and then when they don't work out, back away and start throwing people under the bus? I'll never understand that for the life of me. I never will understand that. And if I make some money enough someday that I can be part of an ownership group, I would love to do that, because that's what I would do. If I were a rich guy, say, look, I'm not running around to scout college practices and flying to Eastern Europe to watch players and going through film for 12, 15 hours a day and combing over analytics and scouting. You guys are doing that, so I'm going to let you make the decisions and then judge you based on the results. Unfortunately, guys, I think less and less of that is happening as the, say, younger new money owners come into the league. It's their toy. Whether they're an expert or not, whether they're good at it or not, doesn't really matter. They put up the money. They own the team. They're billionaires, so they're going to do what they want to do. And in some organizations, you're along to ride sidecar, which, as you can imagine, as a head coach or an executive in particular, isn't a lot of fun.
What is... There's got to be, you're going to be diplomatic because you absolutely should be. I'm not a diplomat, so I won't be. But there's got to be, and I'm sure there is, the way that teams interact with each other.
When Mike does this, I get super nervous.
It's not
A lot of preambles to the statement.
There's got to be like the Blazers and the Jazz got to be on the phone with themselves being like, fucking Sixers, right? Like these fucking guys, like they have to be making fun of each other. There's got to be some level of gossip between front office of being like, well, you guys are good and like we're pretty good and like we're at least there's a holistic structure here. But the fucking Knicks or the Sixers or whoever shitty organization of the day, how much of that goes into and how much of that is like a fun venting session where you can like your jobs are so stressful, you can hop on the phone with someone that you're friends with at a different organization, say Rob Hennigan or whatever, and be like, those fucking, look at that. How about, right? Like, how much of that goes into it? Give me some, like, gossip.
Well, I don't know if this is gossip, but I think it's a lot more fun to laugh and joke about that if you're one of the good franchises that doesn't operate that way. Say what a circus that place is. We called them and, they didn't even know how to answer the phone or, have the right salary cap sheets or, have any deal. So some of that does happen, but honestly, guys, this is maybe not the question you asked, but I'll answer it this way. There's so much turnover now in the NBA that it really evolves. I mean, look at, since you guys have been doing this show on this pod and closely attached to the Sixers, Sam Hinkie and I got hired around the same time. In fact, I think it was like within a week or two of the Combine in May of 2013. And in that time, it's gone from, Sam to Brian Colangelo or I guess Jerry was, temporarily involved, Jerry Colangelo to Brian to Elton Brand. And now there's talk about, are they bringing in somebody over Elton or is somebody to complement Elton? That's in 7 years. So it's just like this, when you take a step back and look at it, and that's what's honestly more appealing to me going forward. If I do work for a team, it's not, trying to be a president, be a GM. I don't really care about the title, but it's being with a good, stable organization with a sound decision-making process because, as you know, you don't get them all right, but like anything else, if your process is sound and you approach the process the same way every time as far as your decision-making, better than not, you get better than average results where if it's constantly chaos and, as you mentioned, there are different owners or people involved or, people are wondering, well, why did that guy have a voice yesterday, but he's not going to tomorrow, or who's going to be here? It's just really chaotic, and it's hard to, as much as people say block out the noise and do your job, it's hard to do that if you're an executive in that position.
Right, and the Sixers are just so clearly, as you mentioned, not that place right now. Like they are.
I didn't say it. You said that. I didn't.
But their team's looking around and being like, "What the fuck's going on there? Who's in charge? Are all of Brian Colangelo's friends still working for the team when it's become like a total shit show?" And like, I don't understand, and maybe you do, or maybe you're gonna shrug your shoulders, but like, I don't understand why an owner who ostensibly cares about what people think of them and their standing in the league and their fields or whatever it is would know that people are talking shit about their team and their organization structure and go like, we're keeping it the way it is. It's fine.
Well, again, all that matters at the end of the day, I said this relative to Danny Ainge, is winning. So if you think the guy's in there, regardless of what people are saying externally, if you think the guys in your walls, players, coaches, executives can help you win, then you keep it. And I'll give you a perfect example of this in the last year and a half. Look at all the shit Rob Pelinka took, in LA a year and a half ago when everything went down with Magic. It would have been the easiest thing in the world for Jeannie Buss and the Lakers ownership group, the Buss family, to throw, no pun intended, to throw Rob under the bus along with Magic. Magic and Luke Walton went out, bring in a new GM and just clean house, and Jeannie stuck with him. It was not popular. A lot of the talk shows I was on, I think Sirius XM at the time as a host, and we took callers, and people were mad. Lakers fans were mad. And then when Frank Vogel was hired, it was like a whole nother level. Like the Lakers, and keep in mind, I'm friends with Frank. You mentioned he worked we were with the Celtics at the same time, and I'm really happy for him. But, this guy got fired by the Orlando Magic. He was 54 and 110. This is the head coach. Why didn't they get Tyronn Lue? Why didn't they get Monty Williams? Again, this isn't my opinion. This is just what people were saying, as you guys know. But, Jeannie Buss stuck with it. She believed in Rob. Rob believed in Frank. And sure enough, they dominated the NBA playoffs. And now they're the champion. And really, as you guys know, they weren't really pressed in the playoffs. They dominated the Western Conference on their way to yet another title for the Lakers.
We take a pause to talk about a very important thing. What?
Did you see what you did?
No.
You said we take a pause. We're doing an ad for By Nature Pet Food. Dogs have paws.
Oh, shit.
It's pretty good.
Yes, I had thought. Cats have paws, too. They both have paws.
Can confirm.
By Nature Pet Food is the best pet food you can give your dog. It is because it is the healthiest pet food you can give your dog. Is because they have put real thought into how they cook the food and the ingredients they use. They cook it slowly.
All these other places, they're not thinking about it.
No, they're just making little brown pellets.
They're just pellets. They don't
Yep.
care.
They
It
don't.
could be whatever.
They could be whatever. By nature, no recalls ever in the 40-year history of the company making By Nature.
Not
They've
one.
never had a recall. You say, Spike, Mike, why is it better? It is better because for two reasons. First of all, the ingredients, premium proteins. Look at the ingredient list. The protein is always first. That is important. And then super ingredients like apple cider vinegar and spinach and blueberries and ginger and coconut oil. And then when they cook it, they do it very slowly. And they do that so the food retains its nutrients. So your dog or cat can get the nutrients into its body because they metabolize the food really quickly. By Nature pet food is the one you have to get. It's so healthy that you don't have to worry about big dog, small dog, indoor cat, outdoor cat. They don't have 75 different formulas. It's so good. It's like, Mike, if you were to eat a broccoli, you don't need different broccoli for different people. It's good for everybody.
That's right.
Right? So go to chewy.com to buy By Nature because that's where you can get our discount. Go to chewy.com. I'm telling you, your pet will love it. Go to chewy.com, use promo code RTRS20. That is RTRS20, and you get 20% off your first order. If you don't want to go directly to Chewy, if you want to learn more about By Nature pet foods, go to bynaturepetfoods.com, and then when you're ready to buy, go to the Shop Now button, and it'll take you to Chewy. So chewy.com, RTRS20 for By Nature pet foods, and then send us a picture so we can put your dog or cat in the good boy or good girl club on the website. By Nature Pet Foods, the official pet food of the Ricky. Pause. You get it? Pause. Back to Ryan. You have to, I know you've done it on Scallon Pals, but for the benefit of our listeners, you have to tell us about the Bridges Zhaire Smith trade and how it came together and the thinking behind it.
Yeah, so it was that was my last draft in the Suns front office, Spike. It was in 2018. That was an unusual time for the Sixers. It was right after the Brian Colangelo thing went down. I believe he had just resigned a few weeks before, but before Elton Brand was put in charge. So it was a little bit nebulous time for the Sixers, or at least externally for the other 29 teams, looking at Philly, saying again, who's in charge, or if we want to do a trade, do we call Brett Brown or call somebody else in the front office and this and that. So that was unusual, Spike, because the deal to some extent was done in reverse, and let me explain what I mean by that is, we had the number 1 pick in Phoenix, and then we had the 16th pick, right? So we took DeAndre Ayton 1, and then there was a big gap, half the first round goes, and then coming back at 16, and we weren't enamored with any of the players in the range at 16. There were a few we liked okay, but we thought there was a big gap from, the late lottery, like 9 to 14 or 9 to 13, 14, and who was going to be there at 16. So we were looking to get up, and we had a couple guys targeted. Mikal Bridges was one of them. So we called I called the Sixers and said, hey, look, are you guys interested in trading the pick? And they said, no. Or basically, they didn't say no. They said, wait, which teams do. They want to see who's available because, if their guy's not there, they're more likely to trade, or if there's a guy they like. And so I called the Sixers, when I think the 9th pick had just been announced. I said, okay, you guys open? They said, no, there's a guy we like. We're going to take him. I said, okay, who is it? They said, Mikal Bridges from Villanova. I said, makes sense, but I thought it was a perfect fit for the roster, with Simmons and Embiid and all that. And I said, okay, that was one of the guys, not the only guy, but I said that was one of the guys we really liked. We're coming back again at 16. We have other assets. We'd obviously, they're not going to trade just the 10th pick for 16 and nothing else. They'd want something else good. So I said, we're coming back again at 16. We'd pay a pretty good premium to get Mikal Bridges. He's one of the guys we really like. But it's on you now. We're going to act like we're picking 16, but call us back, as we get closer to 16, if you want to do a deal or discuss a deal, and we'll give you something good to get Bridges, and you can have the 16th pick. So sure enough, it was probably around pick 15. The phone rings, and we don't know who it is, obviously, but Zhaire Smith was still on the board. So pick 15 comes and goes. And like even on the clock, it's being negotiated at pick 16. And I give them credit; they drove a hard line. This is not any reporting guys. This is just my interpretation. I think they really wanted what they got, the 2021 unprotected Miami first round pick, to then try to repackage that for Kawhi Leonard. I think that was the play, and that was what they were holding out for, and they got it. So we gave them Miami's first round pick. That's obviously will convey now finally next year in 2021. It's unprotected now. Knowing what we know now, I think we all think what we kind of anticipated anticipated happening at the time was that Miami's going to have a very good team, likely, and that pick's probably in the mid to late 20s, which has less value, obviously, than a pick in the top 5 or 10 or even the lottery. So that was our calculation. All right, if you look at the Miami Heat's track record, again, stable organizations, Eastern Conference, South Beach, all that, they're going to be pretty good. That was our thought. So, but I understood Philly's thought too. So anyways, that was the deal. And even on the clock, we're going back and forth. Finally, I said, okay, we'll give you 2021 Miami first and 16 for the rights to Bridges. They said yes. And then the way it works, guys, is, you actually have, like in Phoenix, we actually had to call on the pick for Philly. So we called it. They tell you who you want. The league doesn't let you flop, draft slots on the clock. So they told us, they wanted Zhaire Smith. We called Zhaire Smith. And then the worst call I had to make, just real quick, your listeners, I think will get a kick out of this, was to Mikal Bridges, who had just worn the Sixers hat and walked across the stage, and his mom works for the team. And so I'm excited about the trade. We're excited to get Bridges in Phoenix to go along with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton and all that. And as soon as that euphoria died down, I'm like, oh no, now I'm going to have to call Bridges and tell him, I know you thought you were staying in Philadelphia. I know you wore the hat. Your mom works there. You played at Nova. I get all that. But actually, how do you think about going 2,000 miles west? And luckily, the kid and his mom handled it great.
Yeah.
Well, so you mentioned it was sort of ambiguous as to who was running things. So when you say you called the Sixers, who does that deal happen with?
Yeah, I don't want to get into that, Spike, because I don't want to seem like anybody. Let me bring it. I don't want to say specifically because I don't know, but I feel like the person I was talking to, I'm fairly certain was the person I was talking to was not the one making the decision, right? It was, and that happens sometimes, right? Like that happens even when I was an assistant GM of the Celtics. If somebody, had a relationship with me or couldn't get in touch with Danny Ainge or just wanted to get my opinion on something, hey, Ryan, what do the Celtics think about this? Or even, with the guy Pat Connolly was my assistant GM in Phoenix, or other guys on our staff, they would call those guys sometimes to kind of pre-flight something, if that makes sense, and take the temperature of it. So it wasn't like, I called the guy and, yes or no. It wasn't, one of the owners. It was somebody in the front office. But I feel like at that time, and that's, again, one of the challenges, guys. I'm not picking on the Sixers. This happens to every organization at certain times. But when you don't have a clear, decisive guy, there's more kind of group, sort of like who's in charge. And just from my experience, in my opinion, the decisions that are made are a lot better when there is one clear guy and the buck stops with him and he's empowered to say yes or no on a deal.
Yeah, it sounds like you were right as far as the Philadelphia Nebulous Sixers go, and I hope that the mascot Franklin the dog was nice to you on the phone. I think it's I love the draft. I'm a big draft guy to sometimes my detriment. I think it's pretty easy to determine, or at least easier to determine, which 3 or 4 year players in college are going to be good. They're like solid NBA type of players. Even though those guys often drop in the draft, I'm thinking guys like Grant Williams, Javon Carter, Matisse, those kinds of players that have a lot of tape on them.
Draymond Green.
Draymond. They do something good, and usually at least one of those things that they do good is play defense and play team basketball. The tougher thing for me is talented and oftentimes hyped freshmen who you just don't know will put it together. Devin Booker is a pick that you made and made me look bad for undervaluing him, and then Josh Jackson hasn't put it together and made you look bad for picking him. Happens all the time. Happens to everybody. How do front offices talk to players to determine if they're going to be and make the decision if they're going to be we think this guy is a Devin Booker type that could really blossom, or if it's I don't know, I think he's more of I don't think he's going to put it together. He's just all talent and not quite there.
Yeah, it's hard, obviously, because as you mentioned, the one and done guys, you have a limited body of work. The league is really restricted going back into the high school gyms and things like that. So most of your evaluation, not all of it, you can start evaluating them in the high school all-star games and things like that, the McDonald's game, the Nike Hoop Summit. But it's not a long period of time. Like with Mikal Bridges, as you mentioned, he was at Nova, I think 4 years, played 3. So you had a lot of body of work there at a high level. As you know, their teams were very good. I think they won 2 national titles when he was there. So, that's, I don't say it's an easier evaluation, but it's like a, to equate it to a stock, it's less volatile. You know what I mean? You kind of know that Mikal Bridges probably is not going to be the MVP of the league, but he's also not going to fit. He's going to be, and it looks like he's going to be a very good player. As like a Draymond Green or somebody else. But then there's the, we all get tempted, the home run swing. The lightning in a bottle. Can you find the next Kobe Bryant? Maybe Devin Booker is that, or I don't know. I don't want to compare him to Kobe, but he was an All-Star this year and could be for the next 10 years and go to the Hall of Fame someday. So that's the challenge and the temptation. Now, as far as how to suss it out, that's, what's hard and why every team, has success and failures. You obviously hope you hit more than you miss. But I think for me, guys, the guys who are fully committed to basketball and engaged in basketball. I know that sounds simple, but there's not a lot of family distractions. There's not a lot of off-court BS. Now, you don't expect them to be robots, but can they minimize the distractions, block out the noise? And the hard part, as you guys can imagine, is when you're talking about teenage kids, once you give them millions of dollars, how they're going to react to that. Are they going to be more motivated to prove, that was the right call, you taking me in the lottery, and I want to be an all-star and be a max player like Devin Booker is? Or, I'm obviously not going to name names here, but then they say, you know what, I made it, man. I'm good. I never expected to be here. I'm able to take care of my family. I just on this rookie scale deal, whatever, I'm guaranteed $15-20 million regardless of what happens. So I'm good. That's the challenge, and that's I think any of your listeners, if you they say, I'd be motivated, I'd be professional and work hard, and then if the three of us walked into their office tomorrow with a couple briefcases, say, all right, here's $20 million. Well, maybe I'll sleep in tomorrow, or have a few more drinks tonight, or relax a little bit. That's the challenge, and that's why it's so hard, because obviously those guys haven't gotten the money before. So seeing how they respond and how they will be motivated, that's where a lot of the intel and character work on the background side of it comes into play.
I would never get better. I would be the exact same player. Minimum.
What would you say the most important trait for somebody in charge of player personnel to have? Like the most important personality trait?
Boy, that's a great question. So like the head coach or GM of a team?
GM.
So GM. The GM of a team. So I think the most important trait there, Spike, is, I don't know if I can narrow it down to one. A couple of confidence and by extension, delegation. You know what I mean? So what I mean by that is, I think it's easy to, especially when you're a new executive or a young executive, to feel like, if I'm not involved in everything, that people are going to say, well, why isn't this guy involved in that? Or what, does he think he's too big time for that? Where I feel like the opposite of that is true. It's the confidence and assuredness in yourself where you say, look, I know my strengths and weaknesses. I know what I'm good at and know what I'm not. Do I want to be involved in this? Am I good at this? Not really. Am I just doing it for appearances? Probably. So how do I pass it off to somebody else and know that, if my strength is, say, player evaluation, I'm going to spend most of my time on that and have the confidence when the time comes, whether that's to draft somebody, trade for somebody, or sign for somebody, say, you know what? I'm good at that. I've spent time at that. Maybe I don't know, the newest training techniques as far as what our assistant trainer is doing with STEM and manual therapy. Maybe I don't know what our strength and conditioning coach is doing in the pool or with different training devices, but somebody else can figure that out. I'm going to stay player focused. That's something in hindsight, I wish I did more of or had the confidence to do. And that's where, again, like at Danny Ainge, and I think the best executives, I imagine Pat Riley's like that. I've never worked for the guy. All that other BS, somebody else can handle that. I'm going to stick to player evaluation because I know that's how I'll be judged. And again, the good organizations, the best owners empower their top executives to do that, and others do not, and create all this peripheral noise that frankly makes it very hard to do your job. And I think that's why those teams have a lot of turnovers with their head coaches and executives.
You mentioned Doc Rivers. You were assistant GM when Doc was the coach. How do you think he's going to do here? What do you think the vibe will be?
Yeah, I think he's going to do well. I was really excited. I think Sixers fans should be excited. Doc is a personal friend of mine. We worked together for 9 years with the Celtics and had, a lot of success. And, he left shortly after I left the Celtics. I was GM of the Suns. He was obviously with the Clippers for 7 years. But I think he's going to do well, guys, because he's maybe the best in the league, in my opinion, at being forceful. He's got a very strong personality, but not being dictatorial, if that makes sense. It's not my way or the highway. It's just, no, here's what I believe in. Here's what I'm going to hold you accountable for. And honestly, I think that's what the Sixers need with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons in particular. And so what I would recommend, what I think Doc will do coming in is you will see, or he will try to get Joel Embiid in the best shape of his life. That he'll be able to play, 35 minutes at a high level, all that, both ends of the court. I think he'll hold. And I say that because I just, in my opinion, I think it was really hard for Brett Brown to do that, because Brett Brown, as you guys know, the tenure in the history better than anybody. When you're 10-72, you can't be that. You need to be like a therapist, a motivational speaker. Right? Hey, stick with us, guys. Don't let go of the rope. But then when you're, winning 50-plus games a year and expected to contend for championships, it's somewhat the opposite of that. So it's hard to do both, is my point. And I think Doc has a great opportunity. I think he will take advantage of it, where it's, hey, Joel, we need you in shape. Here's how we're going to use you. We're going to go to you offensively. Defensively, you're going to be our defensive anchor. But that involves, making multiple efforts, talking defensively, switching out in the perimeter, protecting the rim. I think he'll hold him accountable to do all that. And then Ben Simmons, we need you to shoot that shot. Shoot it. Shoot it. That's what he did with Rondo in Boston, guys, just to give you an example of a guy. You watch Rondo shoot in the playoffs this year, especially with the Lakers. I think he shot close to 40% for three. Rondo would not shoot the ball early in his career. A lot of like what I see with Simmons now, and what Doc would do is just stop practice or stop the film and say, Rondo, look at how they're guarding Ray Allen. Look at how they're guarding Paul Pierce. Look at what it's doing to Kevin Garnett. I don't care whether you make or miss that shot. We need you to shoot that shot for the good of the team. And it wasn't easy, and it took a while. But over time, guys, he hammered that through to Rondo. And now, as you guys know, Rondo's shooting and making guarded threes in the NBA Finals. So I think he'll have that impact on Simmons. Yeah, so I really like the fit. I think so much of coaching, honestly, is about fit. And I thought, where I think like Mike D'Antoni's a great fit in Indiana. I didn't like the fit with Mike as much in Philly with the personnel and the style. I think Doc Rivers is the perfect fit. And honestly, I said this at the time. I'm on record in Scallon Powell saying it. I said, look, Elton Brand, 76ers ownership, if you can get Doc Rivers for this team and this roster at this moment, you should do it. And I'm glad they did.
Doc Rivers has historically been interested in having player personnel say. How important is that separation of church and state between the coach and the GM, not in terms of input, but in terms of like the respect that, okay, this is your call, not my call. How important is that?
Yeah, I think Doc's done, I don't want to speak for him and say he's done a 180 on that, Spike, but I think a lot of that really changed with his experience in LA with the Clippers. And what I mean by that is, in Boston, he had input. Obviously, he wanted, any coach would have wanted us to trade for a couple Hall of Famers, which we did, and Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett. So, after that, I don't say it was easier, but it's easier when you have your core and your nucleus in place, especially when you have three guys or potentially four. If you include Rondo going to the Hall of Fame, obviously Pierce, Garnett, and Allen are, and Rondo, maybe. So it's easier to say, okay, bring in a Nate Robinson or, Von Wafer, maybe some guy who's talented with character issues, and if they don't work out, we can get rid of them. That's easier, like personnel-wise, than, what do we do? Do we make big decisions with our core? So I bring it up, Spike, because I think going to L.A. with the Clippers, that was very attractive to him. However, I don't think I know, because I know Doc Rivers, and I've talked to him about it. Once he had all those responsibilities, it was somewhat overwhelming, and he felt like it took away from his coaching, because it's a lot. As I mentioned, having over 50 people report to you, and the job's a monster. I mean, there's no way in today's NBA you can do both jobs at a high level. It's hard enough just to do one job at a high level, right, coaching or executive. It's impossible to do. How are you, preparing for the Sixers to play the Boston Celtics, and then also watching some 19-year-old kid in Serbia? You just can't do that. So I bring it up because I think Doc has been, I don't say humble's the wrong term, but I think he realizes that, he doesn't want to wear both hats. He would like input as far as because he has a style and a system where he wants to play, and he knows which players after, a couple of decades now as a head coach in the NBA will or won't be good fits in a system. But he's not going to stand on the table, I don't think, and say, hey, Elton or ownership, we need this guy, and, you better listen to me. I think to some extent he had that power and control in LA, and then, he realized, hey, look, the grass isn't always greener. I'd rather coach the team, have some level of input, but let somebody else make those tough decisions as far as drafts, trade, and free agency.
Yeah, it's got to be easier to just be like, give me a fucking guard and just walk away and do something else. It's got to be so much easier. All right, you're not going to be able to do this, but can you name all the former Sixers you were involved with in your tenure in Phoenix? By my count, there were 20.
Really?
Players?
People who have played, yes.
20 guys who played for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Or at least were at one point under team control.
Okay. Well, there's no way I'm going to get 20.
No, you're not.
Even close to 20.
There's some deep names, but let's see how many you can get.
Boy. So that includes there were Sixers at any time up until today, right? Like even it didn't have to be. They could have been Sixers long before I was in Phoenix or after I left.
Yeah.
2013,
I'll give you one.
18.
Jeff Hornacek.
Okay, yeah, that's not one that came to mind. Given obviously Jeff's a friend, but I associated him more with Phoenix and Utah. But I think as most people do. But just off the top of my head, boy, Ish Smith.
Yeah.
Yes. Twice.
And these are beloved guys. For the most of these guys, we love them. Especially if they were around during the process years. You have
Isaiah Cannon.
Yep.
Yes. Love
Mikal Bridges.
Of course.
Yep.
I'm trying to think. I think we had Henry Sims briefly, right? I'm trying to remember if we had Henry.
I didn't see him, but also
no,
beloved.
I don't. I'm trying to remember. We talked about. I don't think we ever signed Henry. We talked about signing Henry maybe in the preseason, but I'm trying to. I'm more going through the Sixers guys, saying all the guys they've cycled through there. Boy, I'm trying to think on the other end of deals.
Did we ever have Deontay Christmas?
No.
No.
Yeah, he was. Obviously, we had him. He was a Temple guy.
Yeah.
Your listeners know him.
Yeah.
No, he's a great dude. Boy, this is hard. Why is this so hard? Holy
I'll
cow.
give you a couple. You see if you. Rashawn. Rashawn is.
Oh yeah, Rashawn Holmes, of course. Yeah, that was a deal I did. It was cash consideration. It was worked out.
It was a
pretty well for
good
the team.
trade for you and not for us. That cash considerations has done nothing for us. By the way,
Yeah,
cash hasn't made
yeah.
a single shot.
Hasn't hit a
Yeah,
shot.
I should have got that one. That was
Greg Monroe, who started a playoff game for the Sixers.
Yeah, that was so we had him. We did the deal with Milwaukee, and those were the hard ones for me where they went after. They went after I was gone or after they left Phoenix.
Yeah.
Of course, Mike Scott also under that same.
Yeah, well, Mike never played again. That was a catch and release, so to speak.
That's
where
right.
We got
Did a
him to
lot
make
of catch and
trade work
release
then-
Sixers
then-
during the
then waived
process
him.
here. James Nunnally, how about?
Oh boy,
Yeah, we
there you
had
go.
Nunnally in the preseason. I think he was our last cut. It was actually between him and Deontay Christmas, my first year in 2013, and it was close, and we kept Deontay over Nunnally.
Kendall Marshall, come on.
Yeah, well, Kendall, Kendall's probably not my biggest fan, even though we are both UNC alums, because he was in the aforementioned Gortat trade, and then Washington waived him, and then later on, I think we received him as a salary matching deal in a later trade, and then I think we waived him. So I'm probably not on his Christmas card list. It wasn't personal, it wasn't intentional, Kendall, but I do think I was part of trading him once and waiving him a different time.
Yeah, I'll just run through these. Shavlik Randolph, Danny Granger, Sonny Weems, John Salmons, Lorenzo Brown, Jordy McRae, Phil Pressey, Malcolm Lee, Chris Humphreys, who had a Sixers tenure for a bit, Senk Akyol, who never came over.
Yeah.
Okay, you can see why. I mean, this isn't like a who's who.
It's not a
of,
prominent list. I'm surprised you got as many as you
why I
did.
struggled, to get even, 5 out of 20 or whatever.
That was great.
Well, Danny Granger refused to play.
Yes,
here.
that's right. A really prominent list of people who refused to play here.
So, when I let you go, one quick question before we let you go. Again, the podcast is Scallon Pals. Your Twitter, I'm sorry, you mentioned your back on Twitter is McDNBA.
Yes.
And Scallon Pals you can get on anywhere you get podcasts and the radio.com app. There is one thing we do to all our guests. It's called Jigsaw. Okay. And basically, it is a horrible would you rather. And you have to select the one.
Isn't that a horror movie, too? Jigsaw? Or am I
Yes,
okay.
yes. So
Right.
that's where it comes from.
Okay.
A friend of mine said I was like Jigsaw when I kept giving him these. So here are your two options, and they're both for the rest of your life.
Oh, terrific.
Option number one is every night you wake up at about 2:30 in the morning to 10 brand new mosquito bites on your legs. They are itchy mosquito bites, and they are fresh right there at 2:30 in the morning. They will go away by noon, but they will come back again at 2:30 the night ever. The other option is you have the worst incurable dandruff. No matter what shampoo you use, even if you were to shave your head, that dandruff is always there, always flaking. What is your choice?
That's a tough one. Both of them involve itching. I hope I don't provoke that reaction from a lot of NBA fans or your listeners. They just get uncomfortable and start scratching themselves when they hear my voice. Spike, I think I would go with the dandruff. I would choose the dandruff. I think you can try to brush it off. You can wear a hat. The mosquito. I just hate mosquitoes. That's one of the things I like about living here in Arizona. Growing up, in the Northeast, especially in the summertime. So yeah, I would go with the dandruff and try to manage it. I also like to get sleep, and waking up at 2:30 every night to scratch yourself uncontrollably just sounds like a miserable experience to me.
Yeah. That's the only call.
Well, we appreciate your time, man. I appreciate you coming on. It's cool of you, even though you came wearing mostly a Celtics hat. We'll excuse that.
It's a Scalabrini hat, brother.
Well, you guys earned it. Look, Sixers and Celtics ostensibly rivals, and the Sixers have just failed repeatedly against you guys. So I don't think it should
Hey,
feel.
there's no you guy. I work for the Phoenix Suns more recently than I work for the Boston Celtics.
You're wearing the gear and you're still representing as little as you are. So
look at it this way, guys. If I didn't buy all this Scalabrini memorabilia, then who else would buy this crap? I mean, nobody else is buying this stuff. It comes from China or somewhere. It costs $20. So that's really it. To support the economy of people who are selling things illegally on Amazon. That's what I'm trying to do.
The Scal economy.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks,
it's very limited.
I'll tell you, about halfway through that interview, I was when you were getting angry about the Sixers, which happens about 15 minutes into every pod. I thought, you're going to scare Ryan off, but you didn't do it. So thank you. You came right up to the edge, and then you backed right off.
I don't know. I think these Sixers are just making me a worse person.
Yeah.
Just to be around, to interact with. I don't know. I have no excuse.
Ryan, will you admit how sucky they are? Everyone talks about it, right?
Please. Anything. Do you have any tape of friggin' Mike Zarin talking shit about the Sixers. I would listen to it.
So thanks to Ryan for coming on the pod. We will talk to you again this weekend. Actually, working on another Celtics-related guest for the pod, which I think will happen in the next few weeks. So we're ready for a long off season. Draft coming up soon too, right? We're a month away from the draft.
Honestly, if the Sixers don't do anything, maybe we just all decide to root for the Celtics. It seems like a better way to do it. We already hate ourselves, so that's fine. I don't know, guys. I don't know.
I was thinking, we always do, I was talking to our merch guy, John, the other day. We always do a different shirt for the big Black Friday sale. And I was thinking, like, there should be a Ricky-themed shirt that is designed off of the Pelicans logo for you. So it says Rights Ricky Sanchez instead of Pelicans. And there should be a Knicks one for me. We should, or maybe a Celtics one. Whatever team we decide we're going to, I think that is the Black Friday shirt.
Any other team.
Literally.
I'm going to wear, the Rob Lowe NFL hat? It's me except the NBA, but just not the Sixers.
Yeah. Every other team. 29, yeah, 29 teams. All right, we'll talk to you this weekend. Are you down with TTP?
Yeah, Lickface.
If you don't fuck with me, then I won't fuck with you. If you don't fuck with me,
then I won't fuck with you.
If you don't fuck with me, then I won't fuck with you.
If you don't fuck with me,
then I won't fuck with you.
but if you fuck with me,
I'm gonna fucking kill you! Time for plan B.